Thank you, Paul. Thanks, Mike, for having me here. Before I try to rush you through a 20 minutes trip of a tiny little country in the middle of, from recent British perspective, nowhere. Two remarks. I don't mark any things that I say as opinion, because most of what I say is opinion. It's not proven by scientists, so it's just what came into my mind. The other thing is, my talk is pretty much a question to you, because I'm looking for like international and intercultural differences and things we have in common, and maybe we can discuss about how to make this a strategy. So keep this in your mind. So maybe just those of you who know what was the major sports event in Germany the day before yesterday, Thursday, July the 7th, just lift your hand. Okay, so that is roughly the half of it. And so what was the major point on the political agenda the same day? Who knows? Oh, that's... Seems like there are some MRAs among us, because I've seen like 2 or 3 fingers. Thanks a lot. The day before yesterday, the German parliament passed a bill of no means no law, which is pretty much something in between what the Americans call no means no and what the Americans call yes means yes. This sort of perfect German drawn line, we have a word for that called Grauzone, gray zone. Does this make sense in English? Okay, so that's one of the issues covered. This is probably not surprising to you. Men's movement and men's movement, it started in the 70s as a pro-feminist men's liberation movement. I think there's not much difference between all Western countries. What might be a bit unique to Germany, that a really political men's rights movement is relatively young. The first group that started in 1988, the Fathers Awakening for Children. Nowadays, it's mostly a charity group. It has some political subgroups. So in 2004, Mandat was founded, which is our association. It's really the first group that focuses solely on the political aspect of equal rights. What we are trying to do is just uncover, reveal the discrimination that is done against men and boys in Germany. We try to approach media and politicians, and well, we're facing some challenges which I'm talking about later. The men's movement in Germany has been inspired by several books. The first is The Manipulated Man by Esther Vilar. Brilliant book, which I don't think is anti-feminist. I think her main topic is like liberty and the inability of people, regardless of gender, to really acquire their own liberty. It's The Myth of Male Power by Warren Farrell. Then The Fatherless Society by Matthias Matusek. That was in 1995, I think. So it's really the first. There have been a lot of really good books on men's issues, but I think this was really the first one in 1995. So it was 25 years after the men's liberation movement started, and probably several years after political organizations like Fathers for Justice or whatever started. And the fourth book is Are Women Better Men by Arne Hoffmann. He's a very avid MRA blogger in Germany, and he also has written several books on men's issues. This was his first one, like 2001, 2002, I think. And I think this inspired a lot of people joining the MRI movement, and maybe also pushed the foundation of Mandat a bit. Issues. What are we facing in Germany? And this is my first question to you. What have these two sentences in common? It's pretty much clear they both appeal to the absence of emotion as a concept of masculinity. And I think personally this never has changed. And feminism practically adapted this idea. Men are not supposed to feel. They are not supposed to express fear, pain, anger, weakness. Take it as a man. Don't be like a girl. Me, me, me. And I think that's why I call it the post-war trauma. A reason for that is that the men returned from World War II. They have been very much traumatized, and also they have become enemies to their own families, like the rival of the new lover of his wife, a stranger to their own children, and maybe even monsters who have learned to kill in 6 years of war. And I think men have been hated for two things. The first thing is for having become cruel, and the other thing is for having lost the war, having not turned Hitler into the king of the world. And I think the people who remained at home during the war really haven't forgiven the German soldiers this being defeated. And my question to you, maybe the Americans with their Vietnam experience, is there any parallel? We can discuss this later in the Q&A. Some more issues which might be unique to Germany or maybe not. Officially, there's a separation of church and state, but there are some exceptions. One is the conscription, the military draft. It's at the moment it's set on hold, so we don't draft people into military. But the plans to put this on hold had heavy resistance from the Protestant church. One of the most prominent opposers to or promoters of military draft that time was the Protestant Bishop of Bavaria, Johannes Friedrich. And the reason for that was simple, because the civil workers, or civilian servants, as I would put it, they saved the church a lot of money, because they did all the work for nearly nothing. The church would have otherwise have to hire paid people for.
I'm sorry, for what? For what? Paid people for?
To do the work that those who didn't want to go to the army
Aha,
would
the
do for the
objectives did.
the objectives.
Thank you.
Another thing is that a high church official has a sort of prominent position in an organization funded by a federal ministry, which I will talk later about. Equal pay, or how to lower the wage level. A couple of years ago, a German Minister of Labor, Ursula von der Leyen by then, now replaced by Andrea Nahles. Back then, Ursula von der Leyen, she demanded that a male-dominated industry should adapt their wages to the female-dominated care industry in order to achieve equal pay, but equal pay at the lower level, of course. She's got a pussy or a hell-called workplace. Two friends of mine have been told by their head of department that their promotion to become group leaders has been delayed to an unknown date. The same day they read on the internet of their employer, intranet of their employer, that due to the lack of high potentials, they encourage women to enter leadership. So, well, both of these men were young fathers, so it's really promotion of women at the cost of families. Equal opportunity commissioners, they are all around in all major companies, and it is easy for a woman to complain anything to the Equal Opportunity Commissioner and use the threat to complain as a weapon to bully colleagues. And managers are really afraid of that situation because they know who is the perpetrator, who is the target, but they don't dare challenge the Equal Opportunity Commissioner. Innocent until guilty on false accusations. I think we will hear a complete talk on that, which I am looking forward to. This is the no means no, yes means yes bill I already talked about, so we're facing the same thing in Germany. Illiteracy of working class and immigrant boys, there's a heavy drop in reading ability among lower class and immigrant boys, and there's nothing done about that by politicians. They are very eager to help girls that underperform in science, but they won't help boys or girls that underperform in reading, which really, to my opinion, leads into an epidemic of illiteracy in Germany. I'm going to show you a little bit about the political party landscape. It looks a little different than in US and Great Britain because of the different electional system. We have at the moment a 7-party system, and well, the 7% others, I think most of them are a party called the Pirates, with this sort of a radical liberal party, and some far-right nationalist parties. 7 party systems when it comes to names. But what do they stand for? And I think I repeat myself, but it's really my opinion. A remark about the word progressive. I take this literally, not the progressive thing we were talking about this morning. Really progressive meaning in favor of progress. So we see not really any major party is progressive in a sense of being interested in progress. They are somewhere in the middle or even conservative. The spectrum between capitalist and socialist, it's pretty spread there. Well, I'm doing this because I hate the left-right thing, because to me that doesn't explain anything. I had discussions whether the Nazi party isn't really a socialist party or whatever. I think that leads nowhere. So I try to define my own axis and put the parties there. What we see here, there is a wide range covered between a nationalist and multicultural. And I think some will disagree to me. I think this is pretty well balanced in the German party landscape. Other than the axis between authoritarian and libertarian, there is a tendency among German parties to be rather authoritarian, especially in the rather left half. So, when it
Shocking thing.
The major surprise. Well, the good news is, and I really mean this seriously. The good news is there is no misogynist party in Germany. I don't hate women, and I don't like politicians to hate women, and that's what it is. Perfect. It's pretty different when it comes to men. And to me, the most misandrist parties are really the Social Democrats and the Greens. They even have passages in their party programs saying, if you want a human society, we must get rid of male society. Things like that. So, really misandrist. The only exception is the AfD, which I am, as a rather left-feeling person, am very a bit reluctant to say, but it's just fact. It's the only party that is appreciative of both men and women. Some remarks about our political leaders. Already 20 minutes over?
No, that's 10 minutes more.
Okay. Angela Merkel, she celebrated the 90th anniversary of women's right to vote. She sat next to Germany's leading misandrist, Alice Schwarzer, and concealed the fact that only a small minority of men were allowed to vote before 1919. Minister of Family, Seniors, Women and Youth. We call her the minister for anybody except men. And that's what she pretty much is, and also really openly promotes. I am the Minister of Women, and she has a lot of meetings with women's organizations, and the men's organizations don't ever get hold of her. Heiko Maas, he's the Minister of Justice. He's, to me, practically the father of this no means no bill. Ursula von der Leyen, she started as a minister for women, and then became Minister of Labor, and now is Minister of Defense, heavily promoting women's quota in military careers. So you are a little soldier lying in the dirt and a woman commanding you, so that's her idea of military. Foundations and foundations. A foundation is set up by one or more individuals for a purpose. Example, the Alfred Nobel Foundation, which is paid by the interest raised from Alfred Nobel's heritage and used to pay excellent scientists, to award excellent scientists. It has a founder and a purpose. A German party foundation is set up by a political party to raise public money in addition to the party's budget. So it's really a fundraising thing for the parties. Officially, they are independent organizations, but they are, well, really run one by one. Each party has its foundation. Example, the Heinrich Böll Foundation, which is set up by the Green Party. It's funded 99.6% by taxes. And they have a total budget of 57 million euros per year. While the overall party budget, it's the federal party and all the regional and all the subgroups sum up to a budget of 40 million. So the foundation raises more money than the party itself. The purposes of the Heinrich Böll Foundation is political education, scholarships, international cooperations, sending money to African women's organizations, for example, and feminism and gender democracy, whatever this could mean. So I talk about the men's rights activists, and I tried to put them in a diagram with three corners. One is the academic corner, and the political corner, and the charitable corner. Let's see what comes up first. Agens is a group, I don't know what year they have been founded, I think 2006. They are an organization with a lot of academic people, professors, and they try to challenge gender studies. The Väteraufbruch, this is the fathers. They have been pretty much turned into a charitable community, doing very good work for fathers and their children. But they're hard to get them into political action. The Forum Social Inclusion is a rather small group, but very active in approaching politicians, media, and stuff. And ourselves, we cover about 30 topics, gender politics related. We're trying to approach politicians and media. What to me the main topics are, Argens, or the academic corner, is skeptics of gender studies and feminism as general. The charitable corner is about fathers' rights, and the political is about like equal rights in general. We have some individuals in the internet. I already mentioned Arne Hoffmann. His blog Genderama is really like a daily news thing for anything that's gender related. It's daily lecture of mine, only in German, I think. Karen McFly is a Twitter lady, very, very brilliant, and I took this picture from a tweet of hers. It's a poster by a charity. They promoting against violence to girls, and so she glued and boys. So I think that's brilliant, and I think she considers tweeting in English as well. ICMI16 is a cartoonist who makes fun of pretty much everything, including feminism and MRAs. But I like being made fun of as long as it's really funny. And she is. I mentioned two forums. One is our own discussion forum. It's open. And the other is wie viel Gleichberechtigung verträgt das Land? How much equal rights does the country is the country able to bear? I mentioned this because it's an anonymous forum which covers a lot of men's rights issues, but due to its anonymity, it also attracts some people performing hate speech and misogyny. And so the people that try to denounce us, they often quote from this forum. Actions, this is pretty much what the whole spectrum of MRI is. We don't do demonstrations right now. We approach politicians for dialogue, offer expert input to committees, write letters to editors, run websites. Oh, I rush through this. Enemies, public radio and TV, they are completely governmental controlled, which means feminist controlled. Public commercial media, they just can't make use of us. Party foundations, we already heard about that. Men's magazines, we have a member of Mandat has been interviewed by the Gentleman's Quarterly, for example, and they pretty much ridiculed us because we are not standing for traditional masculinity but for equal rights, and it seems like they don't understand that. The patriarchy as enemies of the men's rights movement. Let me explain this quick. The feminist system in Germany is very much supported by powerful men. And I just can speculate why they do this. I think it's a means for them to stay in power, really. Like a CEO puts women into his board of... What's the other one?
Board of directors.
Into his board of directors, so he can be the one with the strongest position. So he gets less control by the board. Or a mayor who will support his equal rights commissioners will get back help from them to stay in his office. The Federal Forum for Men is funded by the Federal Ministry of Women.
Isn't that the definition of Orwellian?
And it's really really one of our biggest enemies. They won't accept MRA groups as members. We once tried to get in there. It was not possible. Now we don't want anymore. And they are the official voice for men at parliament and government hearings, muting the voices of those trying to really promote men's issues. So it's really a good thing to mask us. Allies, independent political medias, we gained some attention from, for example, the Frankfurt newspaper and a magazine called Focus. They are both mildly conservative. A few individuals in all political parties, they do exist, but they are hard to find, because as soon as they reveal themselves, their careers will be ended. Women, and I also see this here. I think we need the support of women because they... don't say this. The AfD, which is the Nationalist Conservative Party in Germany, it's the only non-misandrist major party, and some AfD politicians, unlike politicians of all other parties, openly sympathize with the men's rights movement. When it comes to equal rights or equality, I see a little conflict with their ideas of gender roles and family. And I also am afraid that they try to carry other topics like immigration into the men's rights thing. Challenges: brown brushing, stop talking like that or we'll call you a Nazi. The government and some university pay people to denounce oppositionals, anybody who disagrees with the mainstream, as Nazis. They writing so-called expertises, usually providing no evidence whatsoever. But still, it's spread among politicians and media, and then that's what they believe. The pact with the devil, there are a couple of men's groups, MRA-related groups that made it into the Bundesforum, into the Federal Forum of Men. And the problem with that is they won't stand up for men's rights anymore, because that would, what reason it will cut their funding. And So the reasons why they do that, I just can guess, and I just wrote there: hope to make a difference, need of harmony, need to feel important. We made it in there. Who's got the longest? Rivalry among activists. This is really what pisses me off most. We have hundreds of micro MRA groups in Germany, and we don't get them under one umbrella because everybody wants to be important. Everybody writes his newsletter, multi-pages newsletter, blowing them into the whole MRA landscape. I'm not able to read all this. To me, it's like spam, really. Whenever somebody brings up an idea, you always find somebody who objects, who knows it better. Whenever we discuss an activity, we find at most 10 people saying, I'll do it, and at least 100 saying, oh, that should be done. The sounds of silence, why German men don't get off their backsides. Are we turning off the normal man? Is it intersexual competition? Is it just unsexy to stand up for men? It's really hard to find people to join us, especially young people. So I'm looking forward to, I think, Josh's talk. So maybe you provide us some idea how to reach out to young people. And that's about it. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks for that great talk. I wanted to make a comment actually in response to your question earlier, the comparison of the populations. I'm a Vietnam-era vet from the United States. I was fortunate enough not to go to Vietnam, but I was in the military during those times. And I really don't, to answer your question, I don't see an exact parallel. What happened in the United States was that we drafted most of those guys into war. Canada opened its borders to conscientious objectors who we ridiculed and shamed for not going to the war, and then we ridiculed and shamed them for going when they got back home. So it was no win either way. When they fought, they were come back and ridiculed and called baby killers, and then when they didn't go fight, they were called cowards. So it's hard to make a comparison, but that's what happened in my country during Vietnam.
Thank you.
Hi, Tony, Sweden. We have the same problem in Sweden with lots of smaller groups. And how do you think you can solve that? There's so many small groups work and try to do this self.
Well, what we are trying right now is building sort of loose operations on specific topics. And see how we get there. So it's pretty much a trial and error approach. But we're anxious to get new ideas.
Over here. There's an ad campaign currently in the United States for some yogurt company that shows a midnight reading of a refrigerator by a father and a daughter. And the father's telling the daughter, you should go back to bed, you shouldn't be eating in the middle of the night. And she confronts the father and says, well, you're not the boss, mom's the boss. and I mean, this has been a cultural narrative for a decade or more now that you know, fathers are either powerless or idiots, as they're represented in popular culture and media. What's it like in Germany? How are men? I mean, how are men viewed in popular culture in terms of authority, whether that's in the house with the family or in the workplace?
Well, I think the role of the mother as boss of the family is a very traditional one and never has really been challenged. When it comes to ridiculing men, it's just the same. When you look at TV commercials or even some movies or even the news, it's pretty much making fun of men, which is not funny to me.
I'd like to address your problem with the small groups competing with each other. And I'd refer to the case model of NATO. NATO wouldn't exist without the U.S. And the U.S. came in as, you know, just the big bear that pretty much defined it. I mean, there's no way that the European countries individually would have created a European army. France tried to do that. But you need some outside force to come in and say, hey, we're the gold standard and we're the black hole to suck you all in together. So I don't know who could do that. Maybe Mike Buchanan, you know, put off his global men's party for them to rally under. But you need some attractor that's going to pull all these groups together, that's bigger than they are, that they can aspire to.
Thank you. So this.
Sorry, we have to end the Q&A there. So, ladies and gentlemen, Thomas Walter.